Oaks. I'm a little late to the party with this one. So this is written and directed by Chris Stuckmann, of course, a YouTube movie reviewer. And the story of Shelby Oaks is about a woman who is looking for her sister that has gone missing some years before. The sister who went missing was part of a kind of paranormal investigation YouTube channel. And we get some kind of evidence that kind of turns up, shall we say, that sends this older sister looking for her younger sister and discovering that she may well have been involved with something from her childhood that could be related to a demonic entity. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about Chris Stuckmann first of all. So I'm sure you'd already know he's somewhat a famous YouTuber. Where do I stand on Chris Stuckmann? I found his content to be a little on the dull side, to be honest with you. I did watch a few reviews from him, but controversially, he once he decided to start having a career in making films, he decided to refrain from doing any negative reviews. And at that point, I didn't watch any more of his reviews, purely because I think you can't really call yourself a reviewer if you are not prepared to criticise. And he did this obviously because he doesn't want to burn bridges in the film community, because that's where his targets are set. But then you're just a promotional pamphlet, aren't you, really? So, you know, from that point on, I didn't really ever watch him again. But I never had any real issues with him prior to that, to be honest. So, this movie, what can we say that works in this film's favour? So, it tries to incorporate some of the YouTube sensibilities that obviously Stuckmann has had. Obviously, the youngest is the one that went missing, and her team were YouTubers. So obviously Chris is drawing from his own experience, obviously not doing paranormal investigations, but certainly the YouTube space. So I thought that was kind of, you know, an interesting kind of element to it. It doesn't make a huge impact on it. I think the movie is actually fairly well directed, I will say. You know, when you're watching this, I mean, there are some elements that I think show a little bit of inexperience, leaning into tropes and stuff, but nonetheless, I do think it's fairly confidently directed for a first-time director. And you know, it had a reasonable budget on it. I mean, like it was a Kickstarter funded, but then I think Neon gave them some more money to do a little bit more polish on it. So it does have a kind of a sheen to it. So, you know, it's competently made, I would say. And you know, there are some choices here that do have a level of proficiency and confidence behind it. You'd be surprised if someone were to tell you this was a first-time director, I would say, because I do think it's, you know, it looks fairly decent, and the polish is there. What I would say the biggest strength of this movie is our lead actress is very strong. This older sister searching for her, you know, missing younger sister does a really decent performance here, and is a very grounded character, and I think has real pathos in her performance. And this to me is the biggest strength of this film, I would say, is her kind of grounded performance. I think some of the writing isn't too strong with her, but we'll come on to that. But the performance is strong. I do think there are some sort of creepy imagery, and it kind of goes down somewhat of a dark path in places. I mean, it's a little typical, but nonetheless, I think the way this movie progresses, it's this kind of unraveling mystery about what's involved, and this kind of dark forces that maybe the younger sisters have had to deal with and stuff. And it's, you know, it's certainly a you know, a demonic oppressive force that does seem sort of particularly kind of powerful and scary and stuff. So I do think there's an element of kind of fear that this movie kind of projects. And, you know, it's relatively kind of well paced, I would say. You know, it has elements of like mockumentary. There are some kind of found footage scenes where they were kind of reviewing video footage that the sister has taken and things like that. For the most part, it's a traditionally filmed movie, but nonetheless, I do think it has elements here, quite a lot of locations, different locations, that gives it a decently paced feel to it. And when we do see effects, which are minimal, to be honest with you, they're done to a good standard. So, for the most part, I think there's a lot to enjoy with this movie, which leads me to what doesn't work. I mean, at the end of the day, I think this movie isn't anything special in regards to story. It's a somewhat sort of typical story in regards to, paranormal investigators finding something. I mean, how many times have we kind of seen that? And then this kind of investigation into that. It's kind of there. It's stuff you've seen before. And then, as I've mentioned, Stuckmann does kind of lean into quite a lot of tried and tested tropes. You would have thought, for someone who has been critiquing movies up until this point, he would avoid cliches and stuff, but that doesn't really happen. And I think, you know, there's sort of typical sort of jump scares and signposted moments and things like this. The typical kind of what I call the FU ending. You know, it really does lean into some typical sort of horror cliches, unfortunately, this film. I do think there is some proficiency in the directing, but I will say the writing is maybe where this movie lacks. So, for example, the original younger sister used to be a YouTuber, and they found tapes of her doing this investigation, and then they find a second tape, or the sister does, and she doesn't give it to the police, and they do try and justify it, but it seems like, come on, this is purely a way to get you on this adventure without having to have the police there. And it's like, if you really wanted to find out what happened to your sister, surely you would want every available resource helping you. I get that maybe you should want to watch it first, that I understand. But then not giving it to the police and keeping them in the dark, surely you would want to have every resource looking for your sister. It just seems like a really bad writing to me. And then on top of that, the sister seems to come to the conclusion that there is an element of demonic possession. I don't really know where she gets that, if that makes sense. She seems to kind of pull that out of nowhere. And you could arguably say there's the evidence of a cult, possibly, but you know, when you see the film, she manages to kind of pull out, there's demonic possession, and she kind of gets to the bottom of the story really quickly. And well, you're not any type of investigative profession. You're not like a journalist or a PI or the police or anything like that. You're just a woman. Yet she's able to kind of find this information out, which is correct. But you know, how would she have got to that? And then she just kind of believes it. And then she ends up kind of going to this prison on her own in the dark. She's not thinking to bring like a priest or consult like a demonology kind of expert or anything like that. And bear in mind, she kind of believes this. It's just like, oh man, it's just like lazy writing, if you ask me. It's just like, we need the protagonist to go to this point. She needs to find this thing. And so I think the writing, to be honest with you, is weak. Now, the acting performance from our character, I think, is strong, but the things that she gets to do are on the sillier side. So I think Stuckmann has some ability, certainly in directing. Writing, I think, leaves a lot to be desired, because it doesn't really sort of make sense. And then we're going to get to the end, and it's just like, I can see where the ending's going straight away, and it's just like, and it does. So the movie is fine. You know, it's a watchable horror film, but it is not anything special. Considering the sort of online press maybe that this would have had, then I'm surprised it is ultimately somewhat of a generic movie. I will also say, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, I think the title Shelby Oaks does not help, because it does not give you any... If you have no idea who Chris Stuckmann is, you have no idea what that title means. It's just the name of a town. Great. What does that tell you about the movie? You need to have a little bit more of a catchy name. I mean, that's no bearing on the actual quality of the film. It's just like, to me, it just seemed like an odd choice to name a film that. But yeah, it's probably it's an enjoyable film. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's nothing special though. It's kind of stuff you've seen before, but done relatively well. Albeit I didn't like some of the writing. What were your thoughts? Please leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.